بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. So inshallah we'll first open the floor again for questions, and if there are no more questions, inshallah I'll conclude the talk, the event. Any questions? I mean, I'm sure you guys have experienced a lot of, yes? Can you give me 1 sec? Give me 1 sec. Let me turn off the fans. What is it? This one, you can't take it, I don't think. Okay, please. Mm-hmm.
The whole Muslim community, while it was not, the whole Muslim. I mean, we know the politics here in the US, how it goes.
Yeah.
So whatever a Muslim does, the whole community gets a blame for it. But
yeah.
On the other side, a non-Muslim, whether a Christian or Jew or even atheist or whatever, they just hold one person, responsible. And they isolate it to the, really one person honestly.
Yes.
Or they have mental sickness or this.
Yeah.
What is your advice to people, how can they even, they can run away from all these topics, or can they make a better impact? I was honestly to the point I wanted to go to the schools and actually talk to superintendents and even at a workplace software manager, that these things are really sickening and affecting.
Yeah.
We understand the pain. We are actually, as Muslims, we are suffering more to this day, or Jews or less, because of all these conflicts. But I feel like we're still carrying that pain.
Yeah, so I think that's a question I don't think anyone has ever been able to solve. It comes with being on the path of truth, and I think that should make us, even though it makes us sad, at the same time it should make us happy, because that's a sign that you are on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal has made it very clear that this path is not free of obstacles, right? It's not free of obstacles. There are many obstacles on this path, and every time we run into an obstacle, because of our religion, that actually in many ways becomes an enjoyable obstacle, because we're going through it because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But it doesn't mean we should just remain idle and not do anything. Like you said, what your intention to do the things that you wanted to do was very, alhamdulillah, was one of the things you could do, one of the things that a person should do, and that again takes you to the state of ihsan. You're not just worried about yourself, but you're worried about other Muslims. It takes you to the state of itqan, trying to do everything in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. It takes you to a state of islah. You're trying to make things that are corrupt uncorrupt, bring things back to their whole and sound state. So these are all qualities that through this obstacle you're able to achieve. But if this obstacle was not on our path, you would not have an opportunity to go this extra mile. Does that make sense? And this extra mile that you go and this extra step that you take is actually takes you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So again, this comes with being Muslim. This comes with being a practicing Muslim. But at the same time, as we said, we want to mold the status quo, right? We want to change the status quo so we can dictate our spiritual beliefs, our commitments to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our practices, right? And one of the ways you do that is you talk to, like you said, but if if you had a few people with you, it will become much more effective than if you just went by yourself, right? So that's why it's so important to always do things together. not to become an organization and name ourselves. No, it's not. We are Muslims. You don't have to come up with a second name, or come up with a name that distinguishes you from other Muslims. You never want to do that. That's one of the tricks of shaitan, right? Because we all know, I mean, this is sometimes we were scared of talking about these things, but unless we talk about them, I don't think anything is going to change, right? Because as soon as we see Muslims start naming themselves, naming their organizations and coming up with their own agendas for that organization, you'll see other organizations start, standing against them. For what reason, I don't know, but just that's the way shaitan works. One of the things that my Shaykh used to always mention to us is, do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la tattabi'u khutuwati shaitani inna shaitana lakum aduwwun mubin. All you who believe, do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Shaitan is a clear enemy for you. And one of the first footsteps of shaitan is naming ourselves anything other than Muslims, to try to accomplish something. You don't have to name yourself anything other than Muslim to accomplish anything, right? Being Muslim is enough, right? If you're going to unite under the name of Islam, right? If you're going to unite under the agenda of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then it becomes, because going back to your point, when you start making groups, different small organizations, and naming yours, when we do that and we start naming ourselves things, it becomes very easy for those who are the enemies of Islam to label us as terrorists. They cannot label 2 billion people terrorists, right? But if you name yourself something and then try to fulfill your own agendas, it becomes very easy for you to be targeted, right? You don't want to be, what do you call it, you don't want to be the sheep that's outside the herd, right? Even if there are 2 or 3 sheep outside the herd, they're still, vulnerable to the wolf, right? But if you're inside the herd, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you do not call yourself anything but Muslim, no one will be able to label us anything, right? We will not be called terrorists. We will not be called, extremists. Because if they do that, they're essentially calling 2 billion people, right, terrorists. And the reason it becomes easy for them to generalize is because when they talk about Islam, and then when you tell them, hey, not all Muslims are like that, they say, well, we're not talking about all Muslims. We're talking about a certain group of Muslims, right? So it's important for us not to. But if that certain group of Muslims had not named themselves something, they would not have that excuse. You just tell them, hey, not all Muslims are like that, and then they have nothing to say, right? They're shut up. But because we have given them that leeway, that door to make excuses for their racism, right? Then it becomes very difficult. So these are some of the, very practical things that we can take. I mean, they're practical, but they're hard. When you mention this to people, especially if they're affiliated to a particular, group that has named themselves other than Muslims, we're Muslims, we're also this, right? It becomes very hard, but I always say, we're all brothers, even those who are part of different, groups. We're all Muslim brothers, but we should not be afraid to talk truth, to say the truth, right? And these are all logical things. We see them and we see how these things harm us as Muslims. So we should all do things collectively as Muslims and not as anything other than Muslims. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think it's important, like you said, to take action, but we should take action as Muslims, all under the name of Islam, inshallah, under the agenda of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Any other questions? Sister, do you have a follow-up? Barakallah. Now again, I will be very honest, and I will answer the questions based on what I have seen And if I'm wrong, if you feel like what I have said is wrong, please feel free. I mean, this is not a dictatorship. Try to challenge me, say you're wrong, this is why you're wrong. But I will try to say everything in accordance to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, and in a logical way. If you think what I say is not logical, please speak out. This is not, don't be afraid to correct me if I'm wrong, inshallah. And this is a way that I will learn as well. Any other questions?
To add on to what she said, the way that I think of it is that everything pertains to your image, because like how she said that when like a Muslim makes a mistake or a Muslim does anything like harmful or illegal or anything like that, 1.4 billion people are or how, I don't know the number, but all of them are target and stereotyped as that way. But the way that I think of it is that if you focus on your image as a Muslim, it really does help the world, because my mom told me this: if you just get good grades and you're as polite as you can be, and you just use those acts of kindness and you follow the ways of Muhammad, the image of Islam will change and shape the way of like how much people like the people around you perceive Islam.
True. Could you guys hear it? Or should I repeat what Brother Ali said? So Brother Ali said was, what he said was we should concentrate on our behavior and our demeanor and the way we treat people. We should make sure that we show the beautiful image of Islam to people on an individual level, which is very important. That's where we start, right? And thank you, Jazakallah khairan, for pointing that out. We have to start from from our own, our own selves, and then we can become from those who help others. Because if we ourselves are not practicing Islam and are not portraying the right teachings of Islam, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, even if we try to impact the larger community, no one's going to take us seriously, right? So it's important, and that is very, because if you know, I'm not sure, many of you may know, Malaysia, Indonesia, a lot of these countries who are very large countries actually became Muslim because of the etiquette of the merchants that traveled there. The merchants that traveled there, many of them were from Yemen, were Muslims. They were so pious that all of these countries slowly, because of seeing how pious and how righteous, how mannered these Muslims were, through their etiquette, they became Muslim. So that definitely has a large impact on how we are perceived as Muslims. Jazakumullah khairan. Okay, so inshallah, 3 more minutes. So I mentioned the topic, and I will conclude that topic. And that topic was when we live in secular societies, and we're trying to become united as Muslims, come together in universities and schools and offices, institutions. Sometimes because we are running away from one thing, trying to correct one aspect of society, we fall into sin. A lot of times you run away from something and you run right into another beast. So what that sin is, a lot of times Muslims are not aware of, or they forget the gender boundaries, the boundaries that exist between the males and the females, right? Now, whatever the reason may be, it's either not knowing or they fall into mistake by shaitan causes them to make a mistake. It is very important for whenever we try to become united to always keep in mind all these teachings of Islam. It does not have a negative impact. What we're trying to do keeps its positive impact and does not have a negative impact. And it's very easy. It's not, some people are scared again to talk about this topic. Getting to know each other and marrying the halal way, it's not that difficult. People make it very difficult, right? It's not that difficult, so keep that in mind. If there's anyone, and I will say it bluntly, if there's anyone, and you have to have a strong heart, right? Both females and males. If there's anyone you want to, marry, there are many different avenues you can take. There are so many different halal avenues you can take, right? So don't be scared to talk about this to your parents. Don't be scared to talk about this to the Muslim scholars in your community, to the imams, right? They can provide ways, right? But never leave it up to yourselves, because many times you will make the wrong decisions, and that is you're trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by molding the society, by becoming united, but at the same time you're actually committing a bigger sin that a person should stay away from. So inshallah we'll talk about this topic as well. It's a topic that needs to be talked about, and most people shy away from. But inshallah in one of our future events we'll talk about this topic. And inshallah we'll get more people, and please invite your friends, your relatives to these gatherings. Inshallah it'll be a welcoming environment. It won't be an environment where it's just I talk. Everyone will talk, participate, share their opinions, their feelings, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide our footsteps in every step of the way, inshallah. And subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, we will pray in 15 minutes at 8:45.